Hi, and welcome to another segment of Badges. I'd like to introduce my co-host for this segment, Firefighter Dave Irusi.
Hello, everybody.
And I'd like to introduce our special guest for this segment, Police Officer Randy Weld.
How you doing?
Nice to have you with us today, Randy.
Thank you, sir. Nice to be here.
We'd love to have you. The reason and topic of our show for today is 911 and enhanced 911 and the differences between the two. Ashland has the capability of what's called enhanced 911, and before we get into that, we'd like to have a little discussion about what the old 911 system in town was like. And Randy, you weren't on the department when we had the old system.
No,
so
I was not.
It was a little difficult for us as EMTs and firefighters and police officers to have to deal with the 911 issue. Dave, let's talk about it. I know that you were on when we had the old system, and there were some things that happened.
Right. At the fire station, we had 3 phones with lights above them, and when the 911 call would ring, it would ring at the police and fire. Police would pick it up and talk. Fire would just listen in.
Right.
That would give us a heads up and a head start to get where the call is and what type of call, because we either go medical or fire. So once that happened, we would hang up and then hop on and go. But now the new system's a little different.
What was one of the problems before we get into the system? What was one of the problems? I know that working the desk sometimes when we had these 911 calls, there seemed like to be a little bit of confusion by the caller, not knowing who they were talking to at one time.
Right.
And I know that we had protocol, and I know that the fire department had protocol on what we had to do with certain calls. But it was there were some times when you had serious situations when you had people screaming on the other end of the phone, they need help, help, help. That emotions ran, with respect to the gambit when you have somebody on the other end of the phone, and we needed to ask the questions like, who are you? Where are you calling from? What is the type of problem that we have that we're dealing with? And many times the person was just fixed on their loved one being in trouble that they really couldn't answer those questions for us. So we had to take time to try to calm them down and reassure them, number one, help is on the way, either police and or fire, both are on the way, and who are you, number one, and where are you calling from? And in some cases, what would happen, they would hang up even before we got the address. Yeah. So,
and by hanging up, you lost the call. We had no way of knowing who called from where.
Right.
That was the old.
Plus, you'd have to consider in who the caller was, whether it be an adult or a small child, who just simply knows that they were supposed to call 911, and from there,
right,
they're unsure.
Right.
So then it would be the operator or the desk officer's job to more or less ask the proper questions to get the information out from the youngster.
Now, with the enhanced 911 program, and I know that some people know that we have it, but maybe they're not too sure what enhanced 911 is. It's just not a telephone number where you dial and call it in. Can you explain to us what enhanced 911 is?
Sure. I'm not exactly positive as to how long it's been in effect, but for roughly 2 years, NYNEX has developed a system called Enhanced 911, where now from now on, where every phone call that comes in through 911, you're also going to get a display on the screen. It'll give you the street address, the phone number. It'll specify a business, a residence. It involves
the thing I like about it is if they hang up, it's not lost.
Yeah,
Right.
as soon as you dial, it's direct, and it will come back, and there's a special tone you'll hear when you pick up the phone at the station. You pick up the phone, you'll hear a beeping tone, and that specifies that is a hang up. There's a small screen on the in the console that will show you. They show you a display of a phone off the ringer.
Right. It says TKL, trunk idle, right, which means there was a hang up on that line.
Yes.
Right.
And with that system, even if, say for instance, you have a lot of times more than not, you'll have hang-ups where they were accidental, where someone either meant to dial 411 and made the mistake, or a preset was hit through the phone. And you have those situations, and you also have the other situations where there's a problem at home and someone dials 911, but then they decide not to. They no longer want to talk.
Right.
So then they hang up the phone, and we still have the responsibility to verify that there's indeed no problem there at the household.
Right. We have our protocol, and I know that the fire department has their protocol when these calls come in. We have to verify that there's not a problem, because maybe the person that hung up the phone doesn't want our services there. because they're trying to hide something or they did something that they don't want us to be aware of. Whether we may have a victim that may want us there to assist them. So we know that we have to respond to every 911 hang-up call. So if you folks make a mistake and dial 911 by mistake for whatever reason, stay on the line, because we are going to answer the phone, and we do have to verify, in fact, this was a mistake. Please don't hang up, because if you do hang up, we're going to have your line, and if you pick up the line, you're not going to be able to clear yourself until we clear that line. So please, if you hear the officer say 911, you're being recorded, what is the nature of an emergency? Just identify yourself, tell them it was a mistake, and that would be very beneficial for us. Because if you don't, we're going to end up going there anyway and verifying that there was not a problem. And some people really don't like the fact that we're intruding into their private life. What do you mean? Why are you here?
That's
and we have
a
to
very good
explain.
point.
We
Very
have to
good
explain
point
to them.
there. The key there, that's also a benefit through 9X, is that when someone does in fact dial 911, and if they decide to hang up, we still have the lock on the phone. So as long as as long as we don't release that phone call, and they have no use of the phone, every time they pick it up, they'll hear us.
Right.
And one key thing that 9X developed also was, even with phones that are disconnected and payphones, you don't need any money. If you grab a payphone, dial 911, it will go direct. And it'll display on the screen, it'll display a payphone with the phone number of that particular payphone with the business.
The location, right.
Or mall, wherever
Right.
it may be, a state park,
Right.
high school especially. That happens
So we
right
have
there.
we have that availability, knowing where the calls are coming in. And now this new system helps alleviate the problem that we had in the past, and that was the fire department was just sitting back monitoring the calls. If there's a specific need for ambulance or medical emergency situations, we can release now this system or this phone call, and we can shoot it down to the fire department, because they have a PSAP system at their station, which will take all the information as well. And now all we do is just press a button, which just says fire on it, and that shoots the call down to you folks. And now you have the same information on the screen as we have.
Right.
So we know that if there's a problem and there's a disconnect, we know that we need to get somebody there.
And before we go any further, I believe we have a clip on the dispatch center at the police station here in Ashland that may help to help the folks understand exactly what we're talking about. So maybe we can go ahead and go to that tape.
All right.
The enhanced 911 program that we have in Ashland. What we have here at the Ashland Police Station is a public safety answering point called PSAPs. We have 2 of them located in the central dispatch area at the department. These are where the 911 calls come in. And usually what we have is we have the desk officer responsible for both PSAPs. This PSAP is the one furthest away from the dispatch center, and it's used if in fact we had another emergency situation. And we can use this one right now because the other one's being used for on-duty services as we speak. Just to let you know what this is called an alley screen and an Annie screen. The alley screen is the screen that shows all the information when the call comes in. And you never know when these calls come in. They may come in at any time. You never know what type of calls they may be. Oh. 911, you're being recorded. What is the nature of your emergency? That is the type of response that we usually have. This is a call that we just use to designate for our 911. If you can get a close-up of the screen, it'll tell you where the call came in, the type of call, business call. It'll give us the telephone number and the address. If there was a disconnect and there was an extreme problem at someone's home or a business, and we weren't able to speak to that individual, we at least have the address of where the call came in from. And our policy is to send, whenever we have a disconnect, is to send an officer to that location to check on the individuals that reside there. If this was a true emergency and they needed ambulance service, we would stay on the line and we would transfer this call down to the fire department. And this is the button right here which says fire. We hit that button and the call will just immediately transfer it to the fire station. The fire department has the same setup down their station, and they would take the call if it was an emergency situation for medical. I'll just release this call, and that line would stay there. All that information would stay on the screen until we cleared it or hit the cancel button. If you can hear that noise in the background, and if you could swing the camera around at a later time, we have 2 set printers over there that give us a hard copy of what's on the screen right now. So if there was ever a problem and we needed to confirm or we canceled the screen before we got a confirmation, we can go to the paper and find out all the information that was actually on this screen because it would be printed out. On the ANI screen is the telephone number that was made, or where the call came from, and the time. The flashing numbers that you see, it says OP, and there's a this is a real call coming in.
911, you're being recorded. What's the emergency?
Now, if you'd like to take a look at that screen, that's the same type of screen. As you can see, it gives us the information that comes in again. Cables were able to give us another call, but it's the exact same situation. And again, you heard the person that answered the phone, our dispatch person answered the phone, 911, what's your emergency? We don't say Ashland 911, your emergency, you're being recorded, because we are a safety drop point to two towns, Holliston and Hopkinton. For some reason, and they made it this way for public safety purposes, if 911 rings 3 times and it's not answered after the 3rd time, this information or this phone will ring down here because we are the drop-off point. We are the backup point. Maybe there might have been a major accident and 911 is ringing off the wall, say in Holliston, and they've got 7 or 8 calls going. We would pick up these calls and we would monitor the 911 calls. So the person on the other end, if we said Ashland Police emergency being recorded, well, they know they dialed their Holliston number. They don't realize that it's being dropped off to a checkpoint, and we are this checkpoint for Holliston and Hopkinton. So our policy in all departments is 911, you're being recorded in nature of emergency. And they would tell us, again, the information would come up on the screen, the Holliston address, the situation that's being reported. We would then transfer the call to Holliston or Hopkinton via our police line and let them know, in fact, they have another situation. In most cases, they know the emergency that's being reported because they've already received 4 or 5 calls prior to. They just couldn't handle the number of calls that were being recorded at that time. You see all these little different buttons down here. These are the 4 trunk 911 lines that we have. So just in case there was let's say for instance we had a multiple motor vehicle accident and everybody was and their brother were calling, these lines would light up. And again, after the 3rd ring, if we didn't answer all of them in a correct response, it would get dropped down to Hopkinton because they are our response safety drop point. Another feature about this is that you may have 2 emergencies going on at the same time, and that's kind of important to realize because, granted, you have a car accident, and most say we'll use Main and Union. That's a common place where most people usually get in accidents at Main and Union. We get a report, 911 call, police emergency. There's been a bad accident at Main and Union. Yes, we have it already. And you hang up on them because you already have their information. You get another call or a subsequent call. Hi, you have a bad accident on Cedar Street. Sometimes when the person is fixated, they're getting a lot of 911 calls, you're not listening to what the other person may be saying. So then you go back and look, oh my God, I made a mistake. I just disconnected this person. That's why we go back to the printer. We can check and say, oh yes, in fact, there was a 911 call from Cedar Street. There's an accident on Cedar Street. At the same time, there's an accident on Main and Union, and you dispatch the proper individuals and cruisers and ambulance service to the scene on Cedar Street. There's another feature that we have that we weren't capable of doing before. If I can bring this over to you, it looks like a regular typewriter keyboard. And this is for those people who are hearing impaired. And we have what's known as the TTY phone. Any individual that has a problem with hearing, as hard of hearing, they would have a TTY unit in their home. And we are hooked up, both PSAPs, both public safety answering points, in this department as well as the fire department have TTY units. They are pre-programmed. We are also told now that we have to, whenever we get a hang-up, it may be an individual that is hard of hearing. So when we have a hang-up, we have to hit the TTY button, which is right over here. We have to hit it twice, and that'll activate the TTY unit. Right now, we don't have a call-in, so I can't really do that. But if, say, this line was working, we would hit the TTY unit, and there would be 2. We have 7 pre-programmed responses. 911, police emergency, fire emergency. Do you need police help, emergency help? And then the next line would be, if we got it, we would see the answer coming right across the screen. Yes, I need help. Go. And we would type in, what is your problem? Go. And they would give us all the information that was necessary. And in the meantime, we would always have the address as to where the call came from and we will be responding the proper equipment and personnel to that home or to that business. But this is the unit itself. Before, when we had 911 calls with the hard hearing, it was operator assistance calls that came through. Now we can do a direct line. I believe we have like 7 or 8 in town that have TTYs, and so far we've never had an emergency at any of their homes that I'm aware of anyway. But we do have the capability of talking to them if there is an emergency at their homes. That's the basic public service answering point, or PSAPs, that we have. This is the enhanced 911 program. And what this also does too is it gives us the ability of knowing when false calls are coming into the station. Basically, we have these up at the high school. We'll get a lot of fake calls from the high school with respect to, there's an emergency or a bomb scare, so on and so forth. And now we'll know. And what it'll say Ashland High School, and it'll give us the zone as to which payphone was used. And when it says a payphone, where it says CNTX here, I don't know if the camera can zoom in that, but it won't say CNTX, it'll give a $sign telling us it's a payphone. These are the business designations up in here. So basically that's it for the equipment. Again, the police and fire have this unit set up. We have 2, and the fire department has 1. And Officer Welwell can continue with his speech. Thank you.
That was one of the things that I wanted to bring up was I know today that everybody has a cell phone. A good portion of people have cellular phones in their cars or in their homes or whatever. We have a special problem with cellular phone calls on 911. Can you explain
Sure.
what the problem is?
With the cellular network and 911, the average person would think that if they're driving through Ashland and they see an accident, that they can simply dial 911 and they'll get the Ashland police.
Right.
But that's not the case. Through the cellular phone network, it's designed so that whenever you dial 911 with a cellular phone, it goes directly to the state police. And in turn, they will contact us. So it's more or less making a train,
Okay.
I guess you could say.
So it's a state police assistance call that,
Yes.
that we get. We don't get a 911 call, so that person needs to stay on the line with us.
Yes.
Because all they do is give us a call and we have that information, but it's on the 911 PSAP, but again, we don't have that information. All it just says assisted call.
And it would be most crucial to give the state police every bit of information you have. That way they can relay it back to us and kind of keep the delay, the response delay, to a bare minimum.
Especially if the cellular phone goes dead for whatever reason.
Yes.
If they go through a tunnel or a bridge, or if they
Yes.
hit some type of interference, or they go beyond their destination point that
That's
they have,
correct.
the specific package or whatever it is.
That's correct.
So they need to get that information, give it to the SPs as much as they can.
So they have to know where they are and what town they're in. Because if they're driving through towns and all of a sudden they enter Ashland, they're going to say, okay, it's the accident's in Ashland and it's on such and such a
What would be
street.
the 3 main key issues that people would need to use 911 for?
911, you could break it down into 3 categories. If you feel the need to, or I should say, the need for 911 would come into 3 categories. One would be to save a life, a medical emergency, of any sort, if any injuries whatsoever. Number 2 being to report a crime, even suspicious activity. By all means, you have full right to dial 911, especially if you're late night, you hear noises outside or in the house. By all means, sit tight, sit secure, and we'll have someone on the way. And in that situation, as well as like domestic disputes, we like to keep the person on the phone.
Right.
So we can monitor at all times if there's any background noise or what's going on there. And the third reason would be for, say, to report a fire. And even if it's so much as a small brush fire to a fully involved house.
Right.
That's
No, medical
crucial.
emergency could be an accident too.
That's
Motor vehicle
correct.
accident. So we want to add that
That's
to it.
correct.
We wouldn't like people to call 911 because they have a barking dog complaint or a illegally parked car. somebody's parked.
Loud stereo late at night.
Right.
We have a business line for
Right.
that.
And that business line is 881-1212, and please use that line, because if you do call the 911 line, we're going to ask you to hang up and use the business line, so to keep that line free. Well, I want to thank you very much, Randy, for taking your time out of a busy
Anytime.
schedule
Enjoy being here.
to work with us.
I got a question for you, Randy. What about the parents teaching the children and stuff.
That's a very good point. I would stress for the mothers and fathers in the viewing audience to take the time, whether it be 10, 15, 20 minutes, to sit down with your kids, however old they may be, and take the time to actually make sure they know where they live, and explain the sequence of events as to if an emergency were to come about, then and what they should do and what to
Okay.
expect.
Well, I'm sure that the parents will do that, and we could talk about this for another 20 minutes to a half hour. But I know that Randy will be going into the schools and talking with the young kids, and hopefully they'll be acclimated with 911 and enhanced 911. Dave, I'd like to thank you again.
Anytime.
It's been a pleasure.
I hope I can go with Randy.
Randy, it's been a pleasure. Thanks an awful lot.
Thank you.
And folks,
Thanks,
remember
Randy.
what 911 is all
Always a
about.
pleasure.
We'll see you next time. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks.
The senior years. These are the times when it's okay to relax a bit. Sit back and enjoy life's simple, everyday pleasures. But life is full of changes. Our needs aren't the same as they once were, and so we make adjustments. We focus more on the things that are essential to our health and well-being.
When my Charles was alive, he traveled a lot for his work, and sometimes I'd be alone for a week or two at a time. And even after I got a pacemaker, it never bothered me much. Not until now. And I worry, what to do if I had a problem. I have a lot of friends, and we try to get together as often as possible. It's been over a year now since Charles died, and I don't think I'll ever get used to living alone.
Mostly I just stay in the apartment here. Don't get around too good since the accident. Been about 9 years now I've been in this thing. Don't know what I'd do if there was a fire. Fire scares me. Had a bad experience with fire when I was a kid. I try not to think about it too much, but hey, this is an old building and there are lots of smokers in these apartments.
This neighborhood's really changing. It's not as safe as it was when I was growing up here, but I can't tell her that. She's been in the same house for 43 years, and she won't move. But she insists on being on her own.
Hi, I'm Frank Avruch. You know, there comes a time when we all must face facts that we can't do all the things we used to do. Medical or physical disabilities, personal finances, family obligations, whatever the reason, you just have to learn to live with it.
My daughter lives in Chicago, and my son's about an hour from here. They call every few days, and I see my son and his family occasionally. That's better than a lot of people have it, I guess. But sometimes at night, I wonder what would happen if there was an emergency and I'm here alone. Oh, I know to call 911. My husband had 3 heart attacks in 2 years. But suppose something went wrong with my pacemaker. And what if I was having trouble breathing and couldn't talk?
Most of you are familiar with the 911 emergency response system. In an emergency, a call to 911 gives you immediate access to your local police, fire, and emergency medical services. Well, now the system's been dramatically improved, and it's been recently installed and activated in your area. It's called Enhanced 911, and it not only connects you to the nearest police, fire, and EMS, it also automatically provides the 911 call taker with the address and phone number of the caller the moment the 911 call is answered. With this new system, even if you're unable to speak or you're disoriented, when you dial 911, the call taker will have the location and the phone number you're calling from and can dispatch emergency personnel immediately.
People are indeed homeless Angeles tonight. The fire itself broke out at about 8:30 tonight. Apparently, it
Doesn't
started
take much to
outside
have these
an
old
alleyway,
buildings go up in a hurry.
then quickly spread throughout the two triple-deckers and into a third building.
Sometimes I'll be
behind
sitting
them.
here and I'll
Heavy
swear
damage
I can
was
smell
done,
smoke.
along with smoke and water damage to
But then I think, it's just me. I don't want to be picking up the phone every time somebody walks by my door with a cigarette. I don't want to be sending people on a wild goose chase.
If you think you have an emergency or you're not sure, pick up the nearest phone and dial 911. Emergency services are there to help when you need help, 24 hours a day. Call 911 to report a fire, to stop a crime, or to save a life. The 911 call taker will direct your call to the appropriate emergency team. Let them determine the proper response. The enhanced 911 emergency system is provided to every citizen in your community free of charge.
She's funny. You know, every time I bring it up, she ignores me. They say, Mama, I worry about you. It's not safe here. She changes the subject.
I do not. Girl, you just worry too much.
You know what she does? Now you will start talking about birthday parties or some other holiday or some other happy You see what I mean? See, you know what you do. Oh, but Mama, times are changing. Now, just 2 weeks ago, somebody broke into a house in this neighborhood.
Yeah, but nobody's gonna break in here. I don't have anything anybody would want.
Oh, but that's not the point.
Well, what's the point?
The point is you're all alone. I'm worrying about you.
Look, I'll call 911. The police will come.
And that sounds real simple. Are you gonna be that brave if that happens? You're just a little scary.
Even when a caller is too frightened to give information, the enhanced 911 system tells the call taker exactly where to send help. The enhanced 911 system is a public service provided by NYNEX and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Calls to 911 are free and strictly confidential. Enhanced 911 works from any phone, including payphones or cellular phones, and is also available to persons who use TTY to communicate. And here is B.J. Wood, Commissioner for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, to tell you how it works.
All 911 emergency telecommunicators will be trained to handle incoming TTY calls. This equipment can generate a series of pre-programmed messages in order to expedite TTY calls more quickly. Please keep your responses brief.
Every 911 dispatch center is capable of answering TTY emergency calls. Many will also have a disability indicator as part of the system. This shows the call taker whether the person has special needs. For example, the caller is mobility impaired, blind, or requires assistance devices. This optional feature is completely confidential. The disability indicator will only appear when a call is made from that address. So remember, if you have an emergency and need to call 911, stay calm, communicate clearly, and remain on the line until the 911 call taker tells you it's okay to hang up.
Suppose I'm having trouble breathing and talking.
Call 911. They'll see your address and send an EMT immediately.
Suppose I'm not sure that there's a real emergency.
911 should be used for emergencies only. But if you're really not sure, it's better to be on the safe side and call.
If I see someone commit a crime on the street, should I wait until I get home to call 911?
If you witness a crime, call immediately if you can. You can call 911 from any public phone.
What if I notice my next-door neighbor's mail hasn't been picked up for a couple of days, and I know they're home? Should I call 911?
Yes, by all means. If you're certain the person is home, they may be unconscious or unable to reach the phone.
Does this new 911 mean a quicker response?
Enhanced 911 won't make the police car, ambulance, or fire truck get there any quicker. However, it will allow emergency services to be dispatched sooner and with greater accuracy.
If someone is unconscious Or having chest pains, is that when I should call 911?
If you find someone unconscious or someone is having chest pains, yes, you should call 911 immediately. Remember, to stop a crime, to report a fire, to save a life, call 911 and help is on the way. For your peace of mind, for your safety, in an emergency, call 911. It's there to help us all.